Hello, welcome to another episode of ATT. This one is just another wee discussion episode. We're going to be talking about idolatry. Well, hey, everyone's favourite subject. It is everyone's favourite subject because everybody commits idolatry and they just don't know it. We're going to be talking about your favourite things today, ladies and gentlemen, and how they're evil.
More specifically, Emma's favourite thing.
Emma's favourite thing.
She told us to do
This
this.
is true. Thanks, Emma. So I've just, obviously the first thing that came to mind in the Bible is 1 Corinthians 10, warning against idolatry. The big one that Paul talks about to the church in Corinth. So that's going to be good. So that's my main bits and bobs.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Well, what does it say, Ben?
I'm going to read it out, Josh. Okay, so it's just verses 1 to 22. So, for I do not want you to be unaware, brothers, that our fathers were all under the cloud, and all passed through the sea. And all were baptized into Moses in the cloud and in the sea. And all ate the same spiritual food, and all drank the same spiritual drink, for they drank from the spiritual rock that followed them, and that rock was Christ. Nevertheless, with most of them God was not pleased, for they were overthrown in the wilderness. Now these things took place as examples for us, that we might not desire evil as they did. Do not be idolaters, as some of them were. As it is written, the people sat down to eat and drink, and rose up to play. We must not indulge in sexual immorality, as some of them did, and 23,000 fell in a single day. We must not put Christ to the test, as some of them did, and were destroyed by serpents, nor grumble, as some of them did, and were destroyed by the destroyer. Now these things happened to them as an example, but they were written down for our instruction, on whom the end of the ages has come. Therefore let anyone who thinks that he stands take heed lest he fall. No temptation has overtaken you that is not common to man. God is faithful, and he will not let you be tempted beyond your ability. But with the temptation he will also provide the way of escape, that you may be able to endure it. Therefore, my beloved, flee from idolatry. I speak as to sensible people. Judge for yourselves what I say. The cup of blessing that we bless is not a participation in the blood of Christ. That's a question. The cup of blessing that we bless, is it not a participation in the blood of Christ? The bread that we break, is it not a participation in the body of Christ? Because there is one bread. We who are many are on one body, for we all partake of the one bread. Consider the people of Israel. Are not those who eat the sacrifices participants in the altar? What do I imply then? That food offered to idols is anything, or that an idol is anything? No, I imply that what pagan sacrifice they offer to demons and not to God. I do not want you to be participants with demons. You cannot drink the cup of the Lord and the cup of demons. You cannot partake of the table of the Lord and the table of demons. Shall we provoke the Lord to jealousy? Are we stronger than he? Question mark.
Say the word down.
Down.
Down. You say down like an American.
No, I don't.
Down.
Say down like an English person.
Say county down.
County down.
All right. Anything jump out at you there?
Yeah, the very last thing. You cannot partake of the table of the Lord and the table of demons. Shall we provoke the Lord to jealousy? Are we stronger than he?
So, the first commandment was first commandment. I am the Lord your God. You shall not have strange gods before me. You shall not make to thyself any graven thing, nor the likeness of anything that is in heaven above, or in the earth beneath, nor of those things that are in the waters under the earth. You shall not adore them nor serve them. First commandment, no idolatry.
No other gods.
What is idolatry, Ben?
Idolatry is idol. Idolatry is taking something and praising it above what should be praised.
Okay. So more specifically, like, what does that mean? What would it mean? What should be praised? How do we know what should be praised?
Well,
what shouldn't be praised?
For example,
are there grey areas? Are there?
So, for example, as Christians, we we should only be praising God. We should only be thankful to God, and we should offer everything we have of ourselves to God. But an idol is something that takes the place of God. An idol is something that we put in front of God. An idol, and a good way to think about an idol, and a good way to recognize idols in your life, is to really sort of picture something that you would rather be doing or rather be partaking in, other than something that is holy and something that you know God would not want you to be doing.
Okay. Yeah. So
Thanks so much for listening. We'll see you next week.
okay, so the first commandment mentions like images of God. What it say? You shall not make thyself any graven thing, nor the likeness of anything in heaven above. You know, it's this idea clearly links like pictures. So, for example, I suppose Old Testament times, you're not meant to be having pictures of God on your wall. Yeah. Do you want to comment on that? Explore that idea. Why is that? Why is that? Even an idol of God.
Because we can't fathom what God is. When God, I think of Moses. Whenever Moses went to see God in the burning bush, and there's quite a few times God says, "I am the God that made the land and the sea." And we discussed this in previous episodes, where it's like land and sea means everything. You know, order and chaos. I am the God of order and chaos. I am the God of land and sea. I am the God of the physical and the spiritual. I am the God of life and death. Like, that is a huge thing, and it basically what that does for me is that paints humanity as a tiny little speck in comparison, because we are within the boundaries of what He created. We're not outside those boundaries. If we were outside those boundaries, then we would stand a chance at sort of beating God and seeing Him physically and actually looking at Him. But because we're within His creation, because we are His creation, He has intrinsically this position of power over us.
But do you not think there's sort of this self-referential lip that's alluded to with, you know, the whole biblical story from the creation story to Christ, and even within the creation story, when it talks about from the start till Adam, there seems to be this strange cyclical kind of sort of goes back on itself a wee bit, and you know, it says in the Bible, you know, we're made in the image of God. How does that play with it?
So what do you mean by, if we're made in the image of God, how does that?
I'm saying, yeah, we are in creation, but we reflect somewhat whatever the image of God means. We sort of reflect that totality of heaven and earth.
Yes,
because mankind is the uniting between, is the point.
Yeah,
of connection.
Okay. So
I'm not saying anything.
Yes. Okay. Right. So you're wondering what the significance.
I'm just
it
tickling
is
your
to
brain.
So you're wondering the significance of what it is that mankind make idols. Basically, if we are this pinpoint moment, if we are this bridge, so to speak, why is idolatry such a big deal? If we are like that.
Well, I'm not saying anything in particular.
You're just speaking.
Well, I'm exploring.
Well, I think if we're looking at modern times, and we look a lot like celebrities, for example, like a really big favorite celebrity is Keanu Reeves. You know, he's just a really nice guy. You know, and nobody hates Keanu Reeves, and everyone loves Keanu Reeves, and I'm not gonna say I hate Keanu Reeves, because I love Keanu Reeves too. But it kind of like gets to a point where it's like, it's this kind of betterment, you know. It's like, if you have any other person in a room with Keanu Reeves is automatically the better person, if you know what I mean. And it's kind of this, like, we give ourselves the words to describe celebrities like that, and basically it sounds right with us, we spread it around, sounds right with other people, and the next thing you know, you've got like loads of people that's made this person the celebrity that they are. And as Christians, should we be indulging in something like that? As Christians, as people who, as Paul says we cannot drink from the cup of the Lord or the cup of demons. Well, I think it's important that we have to distinguish the two cups, the two tables. What is eating at the table of the Lord and what is eating at the table of demons? That's what I want to figure out, because Paul wouldn't say that. He hasn't said that until he started talking about idolatry.
So what is a demon, Ben?
A demon is the spiritual force of evil.
Okay, and what makes it different to an angel or a good?
Because an angel is, in my head, an angel is a citizen of heaven, but is also like a warrior for God. And it's sort of the same thing as a demon, only it's for good, because a demon essentially is a fallen angel.
Right, okay, so I would say an angel is, okay, you can talk about fallen. I'm just saying angels are the good ones and demons, just for the sake of argument, yeah. Angels are that which point to Christ, or point to God, or point upwards, point to the next thing, right? Yeah. So if you listen to an angel, you can't go too far wrong. Sort of the messengers. If you listen to a demon would be trying to point either to itself or something it's not pointing anywhere that's leading to God necessarily. It can inadvertently do the will of God, no less, but it won't explicitly point to God. It'll try to get in the way of that, for example. It'll get in the way of you praying. I wrote a wee thing here. So the theme doesn't seem to be, throughout the Bible, it doesn't seem to just be do not love the world. It's do not love the world in place of God, or apart from God, or more than God, or without that love ultimately being a love for God. And I think part of that, for example, when Jesus said, what's the greatest commandment? He said, love the Lord thy God with all thy heart, all thy soul, all thy minds. And the second is like it, thou shalt love thy neighbour as thyself. If you took this completely pure, like legalistic kind of technicality of you only love God, well then how can we say you should love your neighbour as thyself? Which is the second of the great commandments. And I was thinking, okay, what is God? We can't perceive God in its entirety, his entirety. How can we love God? How do we love that which we cannot comprehend? And how can we not make a false image of God an idol, even in our highest conceptions of him?
Well, for me, I think of loving God as a child loves his dad. Like, if you have a 6-year-old kid and his dad's like 42 or something, okay, and this 6-year-old kid thinks he knows his dad, he sees his dad, he knows his dad, and he loves his dad, and that's it, he trusts his dad. But like, the kid doesn't have to know like everything about it. The kid hasn't known the dad for 42 years. The kid is only connected to the dad because of that relationship as father and son, or father and daughter. And in a very similar way, that is how Christians look at God. It's like we do know him, we've got a book about him, but like I said, there's so much more to God than just the book or just people and just the world. There's infinite more things that we will get to find out about him, but it's all that he's done for us. He created us, so likewise, like a father does to a child, and he looks after us likewise, like a father does to the child, and he loves us likewise, what a father does to a child. And those are the three main things that allow us to have relationship with him. And idolatry is essentially, it's like the prodigal son. It's, Father, I don't want to live here anymore. You're old, you're whack, and I want to leave, and I want to just be rich and do my own cool thing with some people. And Father's like, what? Well, that's a bit mean. Your big brother could have done that ages ago, but he stayed. And he's like, don't talk to me about it. I'm leaving, bye. And so he does give him his inheritance, and Eventually, the prodigal son gets into a bad place. He barely gets any money. He starts to eat the food that he's trying to look after pigs, and then he's just like, oh, I've messed up. So he comes back home with nothing to show for it. He comes back home in rags, and he says, I no longer deserve to be your son. I want to be your servant. But the father welcomes him with open arms, puts a ring in his finger, kills the fattened calf, does everything in his power to show that this son, the father, loves him. Now, when do we in our lives, and I'm going to reference this as thinking like an angel or thinking like a demon. So thinking like an angel, like you said, is pointing towards God, and thinking like a demon is, as you said, pointing away from or towards oneself. So we want in this episode, I think, to be able to distinguish how you're thinking like a demon and how you're thinking like an angel. Because when I was reading about this, that was what I was thinking about. Because, oh man, there are many times you're thinking like a demon. many times. And it's quite strong to say that, because it's like, ooh, demons and angels, these are quite spiritual words. But like, it's a spiritual place, the world. So I think we need to really, and it's powerful to speak like that as well. But I digress. When we talk about the prodigal son, he comes back, kills the fattened calf, puts a ring in his finger, and the father shows how welcome he is. Okay, and Jesus told that parable to show the love of God, to show just how of a father-like figure he is. But an interesting thing about that story is about the older brother who gets jealous, who says, Father, I have never left your side, and never once did you reward me for that. And it says, your brother has come home. He was lost and now he's found. That is cause to celebration, and he loves his older brother, the older as well. And it's this kind of love that is not rewarded, but it's a kind of love that is always there, that becomes enhanced whenever it's strained. It's like going to uni in the States, and like you're far away from your family for ages, and it's only when you get back for Christmas that you truly understand what a hug is. Hugging your dad is like, and you truly understand why you hug your dad, because I've been away from him for so long. Likewise with Christians, when we are far away from God, whenever we fall into a kind of temptation and idolatry, like he says, God's always going to be there to open up and accept us back in. However, the difference though between us doing that and say the Hebrews doing that, who were slaughtered in the wilderness, was because the Hebrews decided in their hearts that if they just tag along, they'll be safe. It's like, oh, all these people are godly, I'll be safe here. But no, they were killed by serpents, they were killed in wars, they were starved, and they've got all these horrible things. And Paul says this is an example of the attitude that you must have. If you think that you can just go easy in God's love, if you think you can just take God's love for granted, then that's not eating at God's table, that's stealing from God's table. Stealing is thinking like a demon. So how can you eat and drink out of the Lord's table and out of the Lord's cup if you're thinking like a demon? So that's in its most basic form, idolatry determines your psychological thinking of Christ-like thinking or self-like thinking. And we all can think of examples when we think like a demon. For example, I love playing my Xbox. I don't really have time to do it that much now, but there's some days where I'm just like, oh, I would just love to just chillax, be on my Xbox and just not care about anything for the next 8 hours. And you're just like, oh, Ben, is that really healthy? Is that really something you want to do? And I do catch myself, and then I'm like, oh Lord, can you please give me sort of the strength and the wisdom to see you in what I need to do next? And and he does answer, and then you do recognize that, hang on a minute, I'm thinking like a demon. Lord, let me think like an angel. Let me point towards you. Let me, in all that I do, let me point towards you. But just going back there, idolism is the strong determination to whether somebody thinks like an angel or somebody thinks like a demon. Idolatry, sorry. Idolatry. Because if you have a Christian and then if you ask him, well, what are your idols? and he says, "Oh yeah, the Lord, the Lord, the Lord." And then you go to his house, and he's got like things everywhere that he talks and talks and talks. And the only time like models or televisions, PC, cars, blah 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 blah, and then the only time you ever talk about God is when you pray when you say grace. All right, that to me is like if Sunday lunches, for example, whenever you go to other people's houses after like church and all, like that's for fellowship and that's for faith. That's not for like you can talk about that any other week, but especially on the Sabbath, it is a God day, it is a holy day, and we ought to be holy.
Yeah, when you said, I brought the, you said like figures or something. I'm like our ideas of superheroes are kind of like our modern day household gods. You know,
exactly.
We'd go out, we'll tell stories about them. You know, we'd have a ritualized ceremony where we all gather one place and face one direction and listen to what the screen tells us.
Yeah.
We go home, we put pictures of them on our wall. We
dream about being them. You know, we dream
we
about
have
flying.
little statues, figurine thingies.
Yeah. Exactly. We collect sort of merchandise from them. We talk about them because they're easy to talk. It's so easy to talk about flipping superheroes as well, you know, and it's easy to nerd out about those kinds of things, but it's hard.
Well, this thing is, it's not a livable story.
Yeah.
It's sort of a regression almost.
They're
fine if they're in their place.
It's
obviously. Yeah. You know, superheroes are great, but you know, if you are sort of living like that's sort of your main thing, maybe.
Yeah, you need to look that.
Yeah. What about Okay, relating to Jesus Christ.
Okay.
So Jesus Christ is the manifestation, the incarnation, right? The God in flesh, right? Incarnate. You know, he was this completely incomprehensible thing, but then he put himself in flesh, and he sort of put himself in a box. And how do you think this relates to? Okay, so now we sort of can have iconography. We can have images of God because God made himself an image, right? You know, if we don't recognize that he made himself an image and we don't show that image, look, he came here.
Yeah.
You know, Jesus Christ came from heaven. He died and resurrected. This happened.
Yeah.
If you don't, I feel like if you contradict that, if you go against that, you are inadvertently denying the incarnation.
Exactly.
That there is an image.
I love the similarities between the Garden of Eden and the Garden of Gethsemane. The understanding that when God walked with man in the garden and loved them, and they would chat and they would talk and they would pray, and I just love the imagery of Adam and Eve just showing God what they named the animals, you know, because God didn't name the animals, you know. He said, all right, birds and fish and blah, but he was like, look, you guys name them. And I love this sort of childlike quality that man has to God. We could understand everything about the universe, but we'll always be children to God. And you know, we sort of show him things like it's like you build like a Lego spaceship and you go and show your parents and you're like, look what I made, and then they're like, oh wow, well done. I mean, that's kind of the relationship I expect they would have, in Garden of Eden. And then obviously the fall, and then it became regulation, and then from relationship became regulation, and from regulation became reformation through the last sacrifice. That's what Jesus Christ was. He was the Lamb of God. And he, you know, it took God.
It was more fulfillment.
Fulfillment, of course. And I was just trying to keep the alliteration there. But of course, though, God
this
came
is how
back.
schisms start, Ben.
He came back again, and he walked among man, and he then was teaching. He came back as a teacher. He came back as somebody who loved, you know, but he says time and time again that he doesn't come to bring peace. He comes with a sword. He comes to pit brother against brother, sister against mother. And he says, you know, and he talks about these hard truths, and it's kind of like to me, it's kind of scary because, like, idolatry is such an easy thing to do. It's such an easy thing to make us feel good, you know. Especially if you're a non-Christian, like, what's going to give you more fulfillment? Playing Xbox with your lads, or watching some adult film, or like just like doing whatever it takes to make you feel good, rather than even acknowledging the fact that there's a God that is wanting to have a relationship with you. But because that God is so all powerful and so almost scary to somebody who doesn't know him, scary to the untrained, I'll say, like, surely idolatry is so much better, and that's enhances where the temptation lies, you know. Like, what are you going to talk about with your friends? A God that has the power to send them to hell or heaven, or the new Spider-Man movie where it's just easy to talk about. You can talk about your favorite things, and then you develop a relationship with the person you're talking to, and then there's a friendship that's formed.
So there's an idea called acedia, or maybe I'm saying that wrong, but something similar. Acedia, have you heard of it?
Oh, okay.
It kind of just, it sums up all sin. Sort of, it's kind of like a distraction. Okay, so that's pretty much what all sin can be boiled down to: a distraction. A distraction from what? A distraction from, you know, the straight and narrow, I suppose. And, you know, think about the situation we find ourselves in the modern world. Okay, we've got screens everywhere. We have an abundance of entertainment, an abundance of time that we just didn't really have before. Previously, we were constantly just starving, dying, fighting wars. You know, now we can sort of live our cushy lives with, you know, living like kings that wouldn't have even living lives kings couldn't even fathom a few hundred years ago. We have this abundance at our fingertips, abundance of wealth, food, even
relationships with the phones and everything. You got abundance of people to talk to.
Even like the poorest rungs in first world countries, you know, the lowest income people, even people on the door, they don't have any income, right? They can still get a flat screen TV, right? That's pretty impressive. You know what I mean? They can still feed their family. Hey, yeah, they're gonna have struggles, but my goodness, compared to the rest of human history, that's quite impressive. That's quite a feat. And we need to realize that. But it also comes with its downsides. It comes from, you know, before the internet, I suppose. I mean, what would have made you stay up all night just mindlessly being brain dead and numb, like flicking through videos? What could have possibly done that? Not many things. You probably would have, you know, read a book, you know, prayed and went to bed. But now we've got this. We've mastered the art of distraction. The art of numbing oneself, I suppose.
That's
and
it's a good way to put it.
It's in all these things. It's a distraction. It's a numbing, and that's the point where you can realize, right? Is this, as you said, am I thinking like a demon or thinking like an angel? I would word it a bit differently, but sure, we can talk about it like that. That's when you can realize, when is this good thing becoming spoiled? Is it numbing me? Am I doing it because I want to do it? I actually want to do it. I would set out my time. If I planned a schedule, I would put this in my schedule. Are you doing it because of that? Because that'd be a good start. Or are you doing it because you just happen to be there? You know?
Or because it's easier. It's just the easier thing to do.
It just takes less effort. It's like, it's distracting you enough to not do something difficult. That at that point, and I'm not saying I'm perfect. I fall prey to, I mean, it's sin. It's the sin of our age, more specifically. But that's a good thing to put it in perspective, you know. And, you know, how is it taken? Oh, how is it? Is that really that bad? You know, watching. Well, is it stopping you from praying? Is it stopping you from, like, living in the world if you're numb all the time?
Well,
I think that's a good
exactly.
metric.
But yeah, I don't want to be talking about idolatry and saying it's this big bad thing. I want to move on to how then we can, as Christians, how you can help to prevent idolatry. And it's just 1 Corinthians 10:13. No temptation has overtaken you that is not common to man. God is faithful, and he will not let you be tempted beyond your ability. But with the temptation, he will also provide the way of escape that you may be able to endure it. So God being our Father knows what we're going through. God being our Father can see how it's affecting us. And God being our Father can provide a way out of it. And that way out of it is through faith, through the Bible, through a living Christian faith. Not just saying you're a Christian. It's like I find a lot of people are like, say they're Christians but struggle with so many different things, and I'm included in that. And we are wondering, oh, well, I'm a Christian, but God's not giving me a way out. Well, are you in active conversation with him about it? Is God your counselor about it? Are you in active prayer? Are you in active discussion with other Christians about it? Are you getting things in the open? Are you confessing to things that you just know you need to confess to? These are the qualities and these are the traits that a Christian. It's called being humble. It's called having humility. And if you have any ounce of pride in yourself to not let anybody figure out what sins that you're doing or whatnot, then I'm sorry, you're in a quiet relationship with God. Yes, you're in a relationship because if you're a Christian, then obviously Christ has died for you. But it's about living as a Christian, and you can't live as a Christian if you're thinking like a demon.
Do you want to talk about? I in my short amount of time of preparation for this, I watched a podcast episode of John Piper, I think.
Yes.
Ask Pastor John kind of thing. I think he was taught something about idolatry. He was saying what it was. He gave examples, but typical. He's a Calvinist, so from his list, decent list, and then from his list, he also picked out, for example, saints. Obvious sort of attack on Catholicism or Orthodoxy, and the idea of relics, and we could talk about that, because I think this is similar to the whole image of God debate in the sense of Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
Like we still don't. It's still not good to have the image of God the Father, I suppose, but we show the image that was given to us. If that makes sense.
Absolutely.
But it's like Jesus has answered that equation. It's like he's fulfilled all these things. He's like the perfect answer. But then there's another aspect where it's like, oh, but saints and this other stuff, he hasn't answered that. No, that's what the Protestant answer would say. I say Protestantism as if there's one group of Protestants out there.
Yeah.
Like I myself come from a Protestant tradition, but I don't think prayer to saints is idolatry. And we chatted about this.
We did, and it is an interesting thing to chat about because
I think I changed your opinion.
Well,
which I think surprised you.
You changed the sense in my head.
I changed your understanding of it.
Allowed, because Catholicism, especially in Northern Ireland and especially in Protestant backgrounded churches, it's very much a single sentence discussion. It's no to Catholicism. It's just a big fat no, but there's not really any discussion about it. And yeah, we had a very good conversation about that. And I never called prayer to saints idolatry. I didn't know what to call it. I wouldn't do it. That's what I was saying, because the Bible calls if you're a Christian, you're a saint. It says that in the Bible. And Catholicism has some pretty wild saints. Like they've got a saint for like real estate or something like that. I don't even know. But there's one where you pray to if you want to get a house, and then apparently it happens. But so I very limited.
I think that's a bastardization of Catholicism.
Very limited understanding of Catholicism. But I was taught in my old church camps in summer, and they kind of talk about it, and then we all laugh jokingly, oh, look at the Catholics. But I understand that's a wrong way to look at it, because like, I wouldn't call myself Protestant or Catholic. I call myself Christian, and I've always done that because of the only understanding that I need to have.
Do you want me to
the only understanding that I need to have is in Jesus and in the Bible, and not in who believes in what. It's if you love Jesus, if you love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, and mind, and your neighbour as yourself, if you truly have a relationship with Jesus, it doesn't matter if you're a Protestant or a Catholic, then you're a brother or a sister.
Do you want me to sort of run through the line of thought I took you through?
Yeah, sure.
That sort of made you second guess yourself. Okay, so the whole idea is, say you pray to a saint. The idea is you're praying to that saint because you think, rather than praying to God, it's like, okay, God's this big scary person. I'll pray to this. He's my mate. He can help me out. I don't need to go through God, kind of thing. Maybe that's a bit of a straw man. That is the general theme that's gone about it. It's you're praying in place of, or it's a distraction, or it's you're just not putting focus on God. That's the crux of the argument. However, the whole idea of this, like, praying to saints, it's the complete opposite to that. It's actually a fulfillment of what sort of God is trying to do. So if I ask you, right, someone who's not God, sorry Ben, right, if I ask you, Ben, can you pray for me for this thing that's happening in my life, right? That would be good to do. But why would it be good to do that? Why would I not just...
Well, I'm praying to God.
Why would I not just stick... Just me and God, no one else. Just us. It's our wee thing. Why would
you not share it?
Why would it be good to bring you into my story?
Well, the Bible says... well, firstly, whenever we talk about prayer, in my head, prayer is only for God, because that's how Jesus puts it. He says when you pray to God, and he also says pray in secret. But there is a sense of multitude. Like, if there's a multitude of prayer, all praying the same thing, then miracles happen. We can see that time and time again in the Bible, and we can see that time and again in other churches as well.
But is that a causal relationship, almost like a Cartesian kind of thing? The more of this, the more of this, or is there something more profound?
I think I agree that there is something more profound, and that thing that is profound is it's children talking to their father, and if they're talking to their father about a thing, like one thing altogether, and then that becomes a family discussion, that becomes a family praying. If you pray with your family, that is a very powerful thing. And if, like, for example, in my family, we'd always pray youngest to oldest, and at the end of family worship, we're all moved out and stuff now, but I really try and keep that sort of habit, and hopefully, God willing, when I have kids, I will have that and put that in there. So there's a sense of, yes, pray in secret, but it also says where there are two or more of you gathered in prayer, I am there also. So there is that God says, I am there with you, and there are two or more of you in together in a room praying. And I believe that because I feel that. I do feel the Holy Spirit. And Protestants don't like me saying that, but I do feel the Holy Spirit. I can recognize his touch, and I can recognize whenever he is listening to me or is present. And not many people I know has ever said that. The only people I know that ever says that are Pentecostals and people, especially elderly people who don't really have anything else but their faith. And I'm very honoured to be able to think like that and to be able to feel like that, and I owe a lot to my job that God has placed me in. But going back, to what you're saying about having this multitude, like I said, prayer is a deeply profound thing because it is the conversation, it is the words that we're talking to God. Jesus says God already knows what you're going to say before you open your mouth. But it's the fact that we still do it is the important thing. It's the fact that, yes, okay, we don't need to pray to God because he could perfectly well do what he's doing without prayer. but it's to show that relationship, because a relationship needs to have communication to thrive. And if
Yeah.
we're constantly in communication with our Father, then our relationship will thrive, and the more miracles that we'll see in our life.
Like I do believe prayer is more important to us than it is important to God.
Yeah.
And say you have 10 people praying for something, and compared to one person praying, and say the same prayer, and something happens, right? And what situation is God most glorified in? The thing where everyone was part of that story. Everyone was all these prayers were answered. 10 prayers were answered, or was one prayer was answered. It's the whole idea. It's like the Jesus Christ story is bringing in everyone from all nations. It's not just a Jewish thing. It's a world thing, and we're all in this meta story.
Yeah, but
It's the reconciliation of everything. It's the fulfillment of everything.
and we are part of that everything. But I think it's dangerous to say what glorifies God the most. God answers that question when he says, do all things to glorify God. And when all things glorify God, it doesn't matter whether one person or a million people were praying. If it was all to God's glory, then it's to God's glory, you know. And that, I think it's that humbleness, it's that sort of humility you need to have to recognize that even if I prayed a 3-sentence prayer, like, Lord help me, which I pray a lot, like that, I want to bring glory to God before, during, and after that prayer. The same way, if a million people were praying, Lord help Ben, if a million people were praying to God to help me, I would feel encouraged to beyond imaginable, and only then would I be able to see that actually God is powerful, because he has moved not even a million people, but he moved say 100 people to pray for me. I can then recognize his relationship not only with myself but with those people, and then with those people's relationship with me. So like you said, it brings that kind of fulfillment, and in a small way it brings a little bit of heaven, it brings a little bit of Christ into the picture, you know. And if you're under stress about something and there's a couple people praying, Jesus Christ himself says God is with you when 2 or 3 or more of you are gathered. And obviously it's a great encouragement to actually believe and to know that Jesus Christ is present in your prayers. And especially if you're facing trials, if you know that Jesus is there, then all of a sudden your trials seem so small, because the God that created the stars, the universe, the laws of everything is actually there with you, and would not rather be anywhere else but with you. And if we have to wrap this back,
I would like to
I know
finish my explanation.
I know, but just what I said there, that is the best argument against idolatry, because no idol would ever want to be in the same room as you whenever you're praying for that idol, whenever you want that idol. Only Jesus, only the creator of stars in the universe would give you the time of day when no other thing would. And that is why you need to think like an angel, because you will be rewarded for it. But yeah, go on with your explanation there.
Yeah, so, you know, we can think for obvious reasons it's good to ask for prayer from our friends or family, whatnot. And it's good in itself. It brings people into the story. It says, you know, we are part of this one story that Christ has brought us in, if that makes sense. You know, it's not necessarily just where it's me and him and that's it, me and Christ. It's me, Christ, and everyone, right? Or else Christ isn't a good enough answer if that wasn't the case, I suppose. But this brings us to so why saints? Why prayer to saints? I'm not sure. I think it was might have been Thomas Aquinas made a few distinctions. It's not. There are different kinds of prayer. Some kinds of prayer, they are only reserved to God. I can't remember the technical names. Maybe it's like prayer of adoration. Maybe I'm not sure. But if you think about a prayer that has been made for a saint or whatnot, it's never just praising that saint and that's the crack and that's it. It's usually asking for prayer, asking for help in the sight of the glory of God, of Jesus Christ. the focus is always on Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
And what is an idol? It's the thing that distracts you from Jesus Christ, that turns you away, that numbs you to that. But what do we say of something that actively points you towards Christ? You do it in light of Christ. You do it as a, and it's not like it's not like you go, okay, this is Saint and that's a dead end. It's like you pray to Jesus for me, and that allows a fulfilling of a hierarchy.
Yeah,
it's a saturated mountain. It's not just the peak and the bottom. It's everything in between.
That's what made me shift my understanding of it, because I thought it was just, oh, if you pray to saints, then it's literally as it is, but it's not. It's asking saints to pray for a particular situation. Jesus says himself that God and him pray for us. Jesus prays for us. So what does that tell you? Prayer is not just an earthly thing that you can do to reach the heavenly. Prayer is also a heavenly thing that people in heaven can do to reach the earthly. You know what I mean? Like, I 100% believe that my granddads and granny and little sister would be, who are in heaven right now, I 100% believe that they're praying for situations on earth, especially in the family. And, you know, I don't at all believe that there is a kind of sense of disconnection. There's a disconnection of sin when you're in heaven. That's it. That's what you become washed clean and you become holy. That's what it is. That's what it is to be washed clean with the blood of Jesus Christ. So when you're in heaven, you are no longer sinful. Okay, that doesn't mean you're like disconnected, you know, and you can't be disconnected, because there's going to be a new heaven and a new earth, you know. So the heaven that they're in right now, like there's going to be a new one, and it's going to be connected together. It's going to be a one place, and it's going to be God's dwelling place with man. It's going to be that fulfillment. That ultimately is what, it's like a little kind of piece. That's what it's. Prayer is a little piece of that. Prayer is a little piece of that unification. Is a little piece of that connection. And to stop praying is to have a relationship without communication. You know, it's to have a relationship with your Father without even speaking to him, and it's having to witness your Father in pain because he's wondering why you won't talk to him, when he's always been there for you, when he's always provided for you, when he's given you a family, when he's given you your food, when he's given you his own son to die for you. And if you still can't look him in the eye, and if you still can't talk to him, then maybe you do need to check what is idols in your life. Maybe you do need to check, because Keanu Reeves didn't die for you, you know, and, you know, like your different things that are, like we talked about superheroes, they're easy to talk about. Things are easy, they're lazy, you know, things numb us. We want to do the easiest thing possible. We don't want to put any effort into anything. But why would we not put effort into somebody who literally laid down their life? And it wasn't just laying down their life, it was somebody who was perfect, somebody who was innocent, somebody who was the worst death in the world, somebody who was young as well, somebody, and Jordan Peterson talked about this. I watched the video of his last night in prep for this, but like, there's so many factors to the death of Jesus Christ that makes it the most tragic story in the world, and there's nothing more tragic about it. You can't come up with you can't come up with a bigger tragedy than the tragedy of the death of Jesus Christ. But the fact that he did it for us means something, you know, it means something infinitely more than anything else in the earth could ever mean. And prayer is a tiny piece of that. And if we continuously pray, then that piece grows until the next thing you know, you're actually in heaven, and you're actually talking to God face to face. You're actually talking to Jesus face to face. That's the power of prayer.
I'll make another couple of points before we wrap up. In relation to specifically the saints, even when you're talking about the stories of the saints, the lives of the saints, it's always like, oh, isn't it amazing what Jesus Christ, what God did through them? They're always pointing to God. Yeah. Always. And if you compare that to the non-Jesus Christ incorporated version, right? These plethora of pagan gods, okay? Yeah. You pray to one of them. It's not like they're in service necessarily to some ultimate god. Yeah, there were there were gods that were sort of the king of the gods, but it's not it's not like everyone loved that guy and pointed to him.
Yeah.
Like read Roman god mythology, Greek god
Yeah.
mythology, Norse god mythology. They're not nice stories.
They're not.
They're usually very selfish stories, and
Very strange stories as
they
well.
usually don't point to anywhere but themselves, really. But as I say, Jesus Christ answered this, and we should recognize that answer.
Exactly. We need to recognize that he is above anything. Like I said, anything that you could ever, even if you want to be, if you think praying or having a relationship with God is an inconvenience, then like I don't understand that way of thinking, because like I said, all of these evidence, everything is there to show that he's the one that sacrificed everything. If you think you would sacrifice too much, even having a relationship with God, that is thinking like a demon. And I say it like a demon because, like, how could you ever say that to someone who did so much for you, and yet you still don't have the time of day for it? And that is, and I mean that to be quite hard hearing, because it needs to be said. It needs to be said, and if somebody said it to me, and it really got me scared, and it really got me thinking. But it was that fear that led me to believe in Jesus. It was that fear that led me to be found again by him. And if me saying that and Josh saying the stuff that he says has any kind of inclination or any kind of makes the listener or the viewer think, hang on a minute, maybe I should think about faith, maybe I should think seriously about it, and do reach out to us, and do reach out to somebody who you know is a Christian, because like obviously we want to be able to go to heaven. It would be really great if we like bumped into someone who was there because of our podcast. But ultimately it's about Jesus and how he brought everyone there together, and that is the main thing. But I think that about wraps us up there on idolatry. Any last comments?
No.
Okay. Think like an angel and not like a demon. Thank you very much for listening, and have a lovely day.
Thank you.